Welcome to Brand Origins. This is Chris Garin, and in this video, I'm gonna quickly go through the origins of Gucci and the feud that led to them losing control of the brand. There are two parts in this video. The first part is all about how Guccio Gucci, the one who started it all, went from working as a bellhop all the way to launching the Gucci empire. The second part starts when Guccio Gucci passed away, which was the beginning of when the Gucci family started battling each other out for control of the company. If you want to skip to certain parts, check the timestamps below. So what exactly happened? Our story begins with Guccio Gucci. The Gucci family has claimed that their origins go all the way back to the year 1410 in the city of Florence, Italy. And when Guccio Gucci was 16, he left Florence for Paris and eventually ended up in London. He started working at a high-end hotel where all the elites frequently went to. And it was all humble beginnings for the young Guccio Gucci, since his first job was to work as a bellhop. He was basically in charge of loading and unloading the luggage of the ultra-rich guests of the hotel. And since Guccio was interacting with a lot of these rich people, he was exposed to their luxurious way of life. And he started to slowly learn their culture, how they talked, how they dressed, and their preferences when it came to their everyday items. The more exposed he was to how the ultra-rich went about their lives, he noticed how a lot of their things weren't only there for their functionality. There were status symbols, subtle signals of wealth. One thing in particular that wowed him was their luggage. He was seeing these elegant leather bags that became accessories to their outfits. And since he worked as a bellhop, he was in charge of carrying their luggage, which allowed him to be able to get a first-hand feel of the types of fabrics of their bags and the quality of the materials. And so it made him think, this seems like an industry that has a bright future ahead of it. And this is something that I can explore. He then sought to create luggage designed to be practical without compromising style. Guccio wanted to learn more about this field of work, and so his next job was at this French company that I'm not quite sure I'm gonna be able to pronounce correctly. The Compagnie de Wagon-Lit. This company was very much involved in hotels and trains, and it was here where Guccio learned more about how the travel industry worked. Guccio then moved back to Florence, got a job in the leather goods industry, and then eventually, in 1921, when he was around 40 years old, he opened his own store in one of Florence's fanciest shopping districts. In the beginning, he wasn't actually making his own products just yet. He was selling items from other stores which he felt wealthy tourists would want. His experience working at the hotel absolutely helped because the shop began to do well. And to take it a step further, instead of just curating items from other stores, Guccio started creating his own products. One of the first product lines that he made were saddles, as well as other accessories for horseback riders. He doubled down in the world of accessories and gradually grew to selling a wide range of these items. They all varied, but one thing they had in common was that they were all crafted from the finest of Italian leathers. Naturally, the store prospered and it started to build this reputation of being a brand that sells high-quality stylish products. Gucci had become one of the most popular luxury brands in Europe. And a fun fact, you see the two G's in the Gucci logo? Those are just Guccio Gucci's initials. Now, the thing about Guccio Gucci was that he wanted to keep the business small. In fact, it would take him 17 years until he opens his second location, which was in Rome. And he only did that because his son, Aldo Gucci, insisted and pressured him. It was also Aldo that insisted that they go beyond Europe. Guccio Gucci wasn't open to this idea, and so Aldo had to go out of his way and take the risk himself. He took out a $6,000 loan and opened the branch in New York, Gucci's first store outside of European soil. Unfortunately, just 2 weeks after the New York branch opened, Guccio Gucci passed away in 1953 at the age of 71. I kinda find it funny that Guccio Gucci died just right after the New York branch opened. It almost seems like he hated the idea of a Gucci store outside of Europe so much that he just decided to pass on. But anyway, the death of Guccio Gucci was terrible news for the family, especially because this ushered in an era of family infighting which would eventually lead to near collapse of the Gucci brand and the Gucci family losing control of the empire that their late father created. When Guccio Gucci passed away, the first signs of the family relationship deteriorating started to emerge. Guccio's last will indicated that the company will be divided between the three brothers, Aldo, Vasco, and Rodolfo. Problem is, he didn't only have 3 kids, he had 4. He had a daughter, Grimalda, who was the eldest daughter in the family. The last will didn't say that she was getting a piece of the company, and so she had to fight for a share of the brand, but lost the fight. So now Gucci, the company, was now in the hands of Aldo, Vasco, and Rodolfo. Of the three, Aldo was the one most capable of bringing Gucci to success. While his father Guccio preferred to keep it small, Aldo had expansion as their priority. His main point was, why wait for customers to come to Italy to be able to buy Gucci? Why not expand and go where they already are? Under Aldo's direction, Gucci started opening new locations around the world, such as London, Paris, and Tokyo. He also headed Gucci's development of new product lines such as designer shoes, watches, perfume, and a line of affordable products. Aldo's leadership grew the brand considerably, but the heights to which he's brought Gucci to bothered him because even though he was doing much of the work, the company was equally split between him and his two brothers. He was thinking, I'm doing all the work, why am I equally sharing this with you guys? I should get more. Aldo didn't have to do much because it's like the heavens did it for him, because in 1974, his brother Vasco, who apparently had no children, passed away. And Vasco's passing meant that Gucci would no longer be a three-way split, but a 50-50 split between Aldo and Rodolfo. And so this kind of shut Aldo up for a while since he now had a bigger share. But then, trouble really started to creep in when the third generation entered the picture. So, you know that stereotype where the third generation usually is the one to ruin things financially for the family? Well, what happens next is a perfect example. Aldo had 3 sons. Since he had a 50% share of the company, he gave 3.3% to each of his sons. This left Aldo with 40% of the business. Adolfo, on the other hand, held on to his 50% share for the rest of his life. This decision will come back to haunt Aldo Gucci later on. So here's the thing, both Aldo and Rodolfo didn't completely agree with each other all the time, but they made it work and everything was fine. Things started to get really bad when Aldo's son entered the picture, Paolo Gucci. Paolo was one of the more creative members of the Gucci family, but he was also a horrible person to work with. Entitlement and overconfidence is not a good combination. Paolo kept clashing with the decisions of his dad Aldo and his uncle Rodolfo, and it even came to a point when Paolo simply decided to start his own new designer brand within the company. He insisted on creating a brand that targets a younger demographic, and so he wanted to start his own. Obviously, he's not allowed to start this brand, and so he did it secretly in 1980. Unsurprisingly, they found out about this and they fired him immediately. They then sued him to stop him from using the Gucci name in any business he starts in the future. The problem is, remember that even though Paolo was fired from working at Gucci, he still owned 3.3% of the company, and so he still was allowed to attend board meetings. This brought forth board meetings where all that Paolo did was to ask questions that embarrassed his father, asking him questions about how he supposedly mismanaged the finances of the company. In fact, there were a couple of board meetings where it ended up in a physical fight. Perhaps the worst thing that Paolo did to the family, specifically to his own father, was when he submitted documents that served as evidence to the US authorities that Aldo has evaded paying taxes of up to $7 million. And Aldo actually ended up serving a year in federal prison for this. I mean, wow, he actually sent his dad to prison. Aldo is probably regretting giving his son a piece of the company while he's still alive. Aldo Gucci is going through hell here, but hey, on the bright side, at least the company still is in good hands since 50% of it is still under the control of his brother Rodolfo, right? Well, not for long, because in 1983, Rodolfo passed away at the age of 71, and now his 50% share goes to the hands of his son, Maurizio. And just like Paolo, Maurizio wanted to make changes at Gucci as well. But unlike Paolo, Maurizio has a 50% share, that's a majority stake. Paolo had only 3.3%. And so if Maurizio wanted to make changes, he actually can make changes. And there was something he wanted to fix first. You see, in the hands of Aldo Gucci, the company was in a period of profitable growth and expansion, which was good. But the price of this was the dilution of the exclusivity of the Gucci brand. During this period of growth, they opened a mass market product line for Gucci. Whereas Gucci used to be reserved only for elites such as Jackie Kennedy and Princess Grace Kelly, Gucci was now accessible in almost every retail store willing to stock the product. It even came to a point when you can buy Gucci products at drugstores. Maurizio's plan was to restore the exclusivity of Gucci and bring back the prestige and elite status of the brand. Unsurprisingly, Aldo Gucci wasn't too excited about this move. because the mass market product lines were extremely profitable for Gucci. This escalated the conflicts within the family. Keep in mind that Maurizio has a 50% share, and Aldo's side has the other 50%, with him having 40% and his sons sharing 3.3% each. To make sure he gets his way, Maurizio struck a deal with Paolo, his cousin, and since both of them at this point kind of hate Aldo, they decided to collaborate. Paolo would vote in favor of Maurizio so that he can push through with whatever plans he has, and in return, Maurizio will buy out Paolo's 3.3% stake in the company for $22 million. This would allow Paolo to finally have the money to fund his own brand, something he's been wanting to do for a while now. The pair put their plan into action, and they basically stripped Aldo Gucci of his power. Aldo attempted to defend his position, fighting back, but was eventually kicked out of the company. Maurizio and Paolo's deal didn't completely push through either. And Paolo, well, he went with this go-to move, which was the same thing he did to get his father arrested. He submitted documents to the authorities citing tax evasion maneuvers by Maurizio. When the police got wind of this, they sought out Maurizio, which caused Maurizio to flee to Switzerland to escape arrest. While he was in Switzerland, Maurizio was able to make the necessary arrangements and was able to fix the whole tax evasion issue all without stepping foot in jail. But the battle wasn't over though, because Aldo, Paolo, and his brothers continued to fight for control of the company. Maurizio knew that the only way to take control of Gucci was if he could buy out his relatives, but then he couldn't really afford buying them out without an investor. I think that this point was the beginning of the end of the family's control of Gucci, as you will later on see. In 1987, Investcorp, an investment bank from Bahrain, offered to buy the shares of Aldo, Paolo, and his brothers. And just like that, with Investcorp's money, Maurizio becomes the first Gucci family member controlling the brand. Okay, so just a bit of a side story. So remember how Paolo Gucci was so eager to get some money so that he can finally start his own designer brand? Well, when Investcorp and Maurizio bought him out, he finally got his money. He had $40 million to fund his new brand. He got the money around 1987 to 1988, and it would only take him 5 to 6 years, which was in 1993, to declare bankruptcy. Yeah, it was due to his extravagant lifestyle, he burned through all his money, and the designer brand he's always wanted to start didn't even come close to launching. There were even stories of how he was so broke that he couldn't even pay off his phone bill, and he eventually died of liver failure at the age of 64. And as for Maurizio, he didn't do too well either. So remember that he had a big plan to restore Gucci's prestige, which was to get rid of the mass market lines that were diluting the brand of Gucci, and to give the brand its aura of exclusivity back. The idea was good, but the execution? Not too much. Well, what he did was that he slashed the mass market lines of Gucci, which was good, and this was the whole plan right from the start. But he may have done it too soon, because without a new line to replace this ultra-profitable mass market line, Gucci ended 1991 with negative cash flow, losing around $30 million a year. As bad as this business decision was, and as harmful as it was to the company, this wasn't the cause of his downfall. Because Gucci, it could have recovered from this mistake. What did cause his downfall was the personal debt he racked up, which amounted to over $40 million. Apparently, he took out some loans, and to secure these loans, he used his Gucci shares as collateral. I mean, what could go wrong, right? Obviously, Investcorp wasn't happy about this, and at this point, Investcorp pretty much was the only thing keeping the company afloat. Maurizio was hoping that they would come to the rescue again, but Investcorp was having none of it. They didn't want to put in any more money unless Maurizio agreed to leave. Maurizio fought to keep his place, but Gucci was bleeding money, and it was 48 days away from having all its assets auctioned. Since Maurizio was also struggling with his own personal debt, he really had no choice, and he finally conceded and sold his 50% stake to Investcorp. And this point, my friends, marks the first time that there were no Guccis at Gucci. Fortunately for Gucci, the Gucci brand is really strong. In fact, it would take only Gucci 5 years to hit record profits of up to $1 billion a year. Honestly, this is good news for the brand, but it's kinda sad for Maurizio because, in a way, he was right all along. Getting rid of the mass market lines was his plan, and it worked. It launched Gucci to new heights. It kind of feels like Investcorp used Maurizio's debt as leverage. And sadly, it gets even worse for Maurizio. In 1995, the year Gucci went public, Maurizio was shot by 2 killers outside his office in Milan. Police suspect that these were hired professional hitmen because of the precision of the shooting and how they calmly drove off. The police came up with 3 suspected causes as to why he was killed. One was that it probably had something to do with the recent sale of the Gucci business to Investcorp. Another was due to Maurizio apparently considering starting a gambling casino in Switzerland. And lastly, that it had something to do with his ex-wife Patrizia Reggiani, aka Lady Gaga in the upcoming Gucci film. Okay, so a bit of a backstory about Patrizia Reggiani and Maurizio Gucci, but take all of this with a grain of salt, okay, because a lot of this is just compiled hearsay from news sources. Apparently, when the two were about to get married, the Gucci family, especially Maurizio's father, Rodolfo Gucci, absolutely disapproved of the marriage. Rodolfo suspected that Patrizia was only after the Gucci fortune. Patrizia was already the heiress to her family's own huge fortune in the road hauling business, but hey, it's no Gucci money, that's for sure. Rodolfo was completely against the marriage pushing through. At one point, Rodolfo Gucci called Patrizia's father, Ferdinando Reggiani, telling him that the wedding shouldn't push through because he didn't approve of his daughter. I honestly don't know what type of positive reaction he was hoping to get by saying this, and of course, Ferdinando got offended by this. What he did was to go to the extremes. He welcomed Maurizio to the family. And he went even further. He actually funded Maurizio's education while he was in university, because apparently around this time when Rodolfo did not approve of this marriage, Rodolfo kind of stopped giving his son any money. Rodolfo did all he could to stop the marriage, even to the point of going to the Cardinal of Milan to find some Catholic loophole that could stop this whole thing from pushing through. But that didn't really do much, and the marriage pushed through. And you know what else pushed through? The divorce. Because they separated 12 years later. And I don't know what happened in between, but yeah, it ended when Maurizio got murdered. Patrizia Reggiani was convicted of arranging the killing of Maurizio and was sentenced to 29 years in prison. The killing earned her the name Black Widow. She attempted to kill herself by hanging herself using a shoelace, but then she was rescued. And in October 2016, due to good behavior, she was released after serving 18 years in prison. And yeah, I don't know how they're gonna portray her, but she's gonna be in a new film. Was this her plan all along? Did she have to kill her husband so that they'll be in a movie? If it was, then mission accomplished. And that's about it, guys. Now you know about the story of Gucci. I would absolutely appreciate it if you can leave a comment and a like, because this helps the YouTube algorithm find my videos. Don't forget that I also have a podcast. Just search for Brand Origins on any podcast app. You can also check out my social media pages as well. The links are in the description. Until the next video, this is Chris Garin.